front of Thomas. So then Thomas, so he can, Death can just knock trees down. So then Thomas has to fall. And then this barbed wire fence rips Rory in 3 pieces. And they actually did that practically. So they built the rig, and then they filmed it in front of a green screen where the actor wore green pants. And then they had the thing fall apart. So it was very Cube, Resident Evil-esque. Well, actually, Cube-esque.
Ghost Ship.
Yeah, Ghost Ship.
I love movies that do that, yeah. I love movies when they do that. It's so entertaining.
But it was a fun practical death. And I kind of dug how that field just became a killing field for everybody. But I like that Death a lot. But it's interesting. Death wanted Thomas on the ground, so Rory got killed instead of Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
Death had to act quick.
Yeah.
What's Death doing? So Death is putting all of its focus on these 4 people at this time in this field. There are billions of people in this world.
Right. So I look at that almost like Death Takes a Holiday or the new Meet Joe Black, where, I like how Brad Pitt puts it, and it's probably the same way the original actor put it. It's like, well, when you put on your tie this morning, you weren't just putting on your tie. You were thinking about your day. You were making decisions. Like, maybe all this stuff, when people aren't resisting death actively, are kind of autonomous. It's kind of like reminding yourself of all the things you need to pick up at the store later, or, realizing that you don't have time for that Pop-Tart and you just need to get in the car and get to work because you woke up 5 minutes late. Maybe death is autopiloting a lot of this stuff.
Got it. And then it has to go actually change other things, kind of architect other situations when there's a blip.
Right. And then like you said, the tree fall, like maybe Death can't just make any tree fall, but maybe that tree was destined to fall that year, and Death does have the power to flex a little bit when it falls. But maybe he can't make a tree fall that it wasn't going to fall for like 5 more years.
Does Death just blink at it, or does it it's everywhere? So does it push it? Does it have 2 hands pushing it?
I mean, he's got to have some like ancient magical power. I think he's like willing it.
Or it's. Do you think it's peanut butter like Meet Joe Black?
Who on earth? What kind of monster doesn't like peanut butter?
No, remember the peanut butter scene from?
No, I know. Yeah.
Do you think Death eats peanut butter like that?
He loves the peanut butter. I mean, if Death ever had the luxury of eating peanut butter, I'll bet he would love it. Oh my God! What if this Death from the Final Destination world manifested itself, kind of like in Meet Joe Black and Death Takes a Holiday, consumed peanut butter, but was in a body deathly allergic to peanut butter, and when dying in that body actually dies and Death no longer existed?
Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
I like that. End of the movie. Done.
And then no one dies ever, and it turns into pandemonium.
Just overcrowding. I do love that scene took place at the 180 mile marker.
180 appears a lot in parts 2 and 3.
Now, all right, so we're moving on to the end. That cop, Thomas, he grabs Caligari's, the Dr. She should have been Dr. Caligari.
Right? Like the old horror movie, right?
Right?
When we first met her, she should have been in a cabinet.
Yeah, just digging in it, like grabbing something out of it. Oh my gosh.
Like a big scary syringe.
That'd have been the greatest. Oh my God. And then it's a little off-centered, like the German expressionism, because one of the legs is broken. So it looks a little off. Whoa. But he really grabs her by the arm, doesn't he? Like, he roughhouses her.
No, he does. He Captain America arm grabs her, like in the early Captain America.
He Winter Soldiers her. That's a good one.
Yeah, we talked about that way back in the day.
Yeah, like the best arm grabs of 24. There was a lot of arm grabs in that year. Arm grabs everywhere, John. Poor Black Widow.
That cop really tried, but I got to tell you, for all the likability of the characters, I think that character got the least service. He organized things, right? His character was involved with organizing everything, but the actual scenes or emotions or personal bits seemed a little weaker for him for some reason.
Yeah, he's kind of an egg.
Yeah, he was more the tool to get everyone together to guide some events.
So what were your overall thoughts before we move into 3? What do you like most about 2?
Honestly, it's that the energy is noticeably higher than part 1. Like, for me, the death scenes themselves are more engaging purely on an energy level, how exciting they are. They don't necessarily build up the same amount of tension as part 1, and I may not be quite as invested in the characters as much as in part 1. And that was part 1's huge strength, right? It was it was the characters, and it was the tension. This one did a good job of super amping up the death scenes without totally squandering the other stuff, which unfortunately is what starts to happen in 3 and 4.
All right. I love it. I can't say better than that. So when we come back, we'll talk Final Destination 3. Welcome back to Movies, Films, and Flicks. John, how is that Jell-O? You know, because you're currently driving in your airbag. Is it tasty? Do you have to refill it every day? I gotta tell you,
I mean, that airbag went off, and I got a mouthful of orange Jell-O, and it was delicious. And thankfully, my head didn't get slammed into this jagged PVC pipe behind my head.
That's, you know, I gotta tell you, John, thank you. I mean, you are driving through some really insane conditions right now, but your audio sounds great. You're in great spirits. You're currently covered in orange Jell-O. Your car's a little damaged, but I appreciate it. So whenever
I look like Venkman after being covered in that pink ooze in Ghostbusters 2.
But it's worth it, right? It's worth it.
Sure. Right. It's tasty.
So we're back to all right. So we're on to Final Destination 3. James Wong, he directed the first one. He came back to direct the third one. Glenn Morgan came back to write the script for this one as well. All right. Do you like 3?
So, okay, does 3 entertain me? Do I like it by itself as an entertaining thing to watch? Yes. Do I think that this movie was the first movie to perform a disservice to the Final Destination franchise? Also, yes.
So I watched this. I'm actually more into the behind-the-scenes stories in this. I would rather talk about how They made these kids go on this really tiny roller coaster 27 times in one night, and then they digitally made it larger, and then they filmed all the green screen stuff of them hanging, and then when they got onto the roller coaster, that was a set inside of a warehouse because they couldn't build it at the actual theme park, and they put like a gimbal on it to shake the kids. They actually they strapped cameras on to the sides of the roller coasters to make those shots look better. I mean, I was more into that. I mean, I don't know how getting ripped in half works, John. I got to tell you, I'm not an expert in that. But there's a round pipe that isn't sharp that rips a kid in half. I mean, and they're going probably 30 miles an hour?
Sure. Well, whatever. Let's just call it 50. I don't even think it makes the difference of that, though.
Yeah. I don't know. This one, I also think it has my least favorite kills with Ashley and Ashley. No, that's not both their names. It's
Ashley and Ashlyn.
Yeah, Ashley and Ashlyn. Actually, one of them, Ashley, she was in Tucker and Dale, and the other one was in Hot Tub Time Machine. And then one of them was in Black Christmas, the Crystal Lowe. She was in Black Christmas with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and it was directed by Glenn Morgan, who wrote Final Destination 1 and 3.
Now, I actually love their death scene.
Really? Yeah.
I actually like those characters for reasons people normally wouldn't think of. But I think that this movie, all the things that I said at the end of our discussion of Final Destination 2, that they did right, that they amped up the deaths without, squandering the characters and the story and the buildup. I feel like this movie thought death scene, death scene, death scene, and everything else got thrown out the window. And then we talked about how the beginning of part 2 had all that kind of not exactly sleazy, but a lot of locker room talk, a lot of drug talk, a lot of hypertrope stuff. Here things are really troped up, and they seem to stay that way much more pervasively. Mm-hmm. And the skeezy characters just stay skeezy. Like the guy with the camera.
Yeah. With that scene where they're looking, so he took under the skirt shot, and they're just watching it. He's watching it, just cringing. And you're going, why do this is our protagonist. I don't like this guy at all.
Yeah. And also, as this movie progressed, my advancement of care for these characters went very little. I cared a little more over time, barely, because she started out very sympathetic, about Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character. If we were to have a star, she's like our Devon Sawa Alex in part 1. She's like our Kim AJ Cook in part 2. But she's the only one that I really cared about at all.
But she's a control freak. I thought she was almost too good for this. I know this is bad, but her performance she's very good in this. I would put this performance up against any other performance in this franchise. But as far as a character goes,
It's just that all the writing around her didn't match her character and her.
And why did her sister, Julie, never bring up the fact, that, oh, hey, I survived that roller coaster too?
She wasn't supposed to be there. Remember, she was in the picture and she wasn't supposed to be there, and then her parents would find out that she was there when she wasn't supposed to be, and she lied or something.
But Mary knew, right? Wouldn't she be like, hey, we can't talk about it, but I was there with you? Because Winstead already knew she was there.
Yeah, but they have a very contentious relationship.
Yeah, she's always busting out the double bird.
Yeah, like I see all good points, and maybe over the course of like a couple days, something maybe would have come out. But it's like I get it, but they almost designed these characters to have less synergy with one another than the previous ones, like you have this jock who's the super asshole jock to like everybody. You have the skeezy guy who really just cares about him doing his skeezy things and trying to get laid all the time. It's you have the sister who's contentious with her sister all the time, except for a few moments when they're talking about a loved one's death. And then before the scene's over, it comes back to contention for some reason.
Being around Frankie Cheeks, that old guy who's just skeezing all the time, would be so annoying.
Yeah, guy was...
The one thing I kind of like, I liked, was that Mary Elizabeth Winstead, her character Wendy, and Kevin, the skeezy guy, they were both in the ring too together, by the way, who takes the really gross shots, he's a dirtbag, but I like how they don't have a relationship. They just kind of become friends. Like there's no...
they start to work together. Yeah.
And so I thought that was an interesting decision, because in the first one you kind of had Sawa and Ellie Larder bonding, and then the second one you had Egg Cop and AJ Cook bonding. And so this one, it was more of like we just probably should work together, which is...
Yeah.
That's a refreshing spin.
Sure, I thought it could have been better, but I think almost all the character relationships in this could have been a lot better.
In this movie, they couldn't do fireworks because the people around that area wouldn't do fireworks. So they only did one night of fireworks, and the rest they created via an intricate light system to make it look like fireworks were going off. And they talked about that during the commentary, and I loved it.
The whole fireworks thing, that whole sequence where there were 2 deaths, I was not impressed with that.
Yeah, she got a rope wrapped around her with like a metal pole and dragged around, and then the guy got
dragged
smushed
around by the horse, and you're just like, okay, this doesn't look visually very satisfying. When she got yanked, she probably would have had her neck broken anyway. Momentarily, I was entertained when her friend, who, by the way, we're only seeing for the first time a second before she gets killed, gets harpooned by that flagpole, which is an entertaining abrupt death.
Perry.
But and then the jerky emo guy gets smushed, and that's entertaining, but it was very CGI'd out. It lacked the organic look of the kid getting smushed in part 2 that we were talking about outside the dentist's office. Everything here felt a couple rungs lower in quality, satisfaction, execution, build up.
So let's talk about the centerpiece killed of this that you say you like, and the characters that you like for reasons most people dislike them. What do you like about the Ashley and Ashlyn scenario?
Those characters played, so they are our plastics, right? They are our Mean Girls-esque kind of plastic, shallow girls. But those shallow girls, in most movies, they are hyper-troped up shallow girls. In this, even though they aren't good at it, they try to be nice multiple times, which normally your shallow girls never do when you're the shallow girl character in these ensemble, murder fodder horror movies. They went out of their way to give their phone number to Wendy after her loss. Even though they're shallow in general, they say, well, we should get, and by the way, we're going to go tanning later if you want to come, or here's our phone number if you want to talk. And Wendy just crumples it up, and you're just like, but I was thinking they aren't good at this, but they were actually really trying.
Okay.
And so that's really interesting to me, even though other times, like when we first meet them, they're being really shallow when they're playing the games at the carnival. Then later they behave very shallowly later. And they're just going to go tanning to look good for everyone at the memorial because that's the right thing to do. Obviously, that's shallow. But then when we see them, though, after they try to be really nice to Wendy and they're at the tanning place, and I'll skip some of the stuff, but when they put on that music and they are like having a naturally good time, bobbing their feet, mouthing the words to Love Roller Coaster and bobbing their heads, that felt like really sincere and nice and fun. And like those were people having a nice, fun time literally before they died a horrible death, which doesn't normally happen in these movies.